G'day, I'm Brett. I'm a freelance videographer and I just want to do a bit of a rundown on my workflow for shooting and cutting Canon Cinema Raw Light. This is a great format and the workflow for it has improved a lot since it was first introduced in 2017. Now I love Canon Cinema Raw Light, but I think one of the things that has really held it back from being a widely adopted format has been the fixed data rate. At 1 gigabit per second, that's 125 megabytes per second, which is about 7.5 gig per minute. Compared to a Blackmagic or a Red where you can adjust the compression to better suit your storage needs, this has always been a bit limiting. Honestly, if Canon just made this one tweak, I think they'd see a much bigger uptake of it. Historically, also, the workflow for this, when it was first introduced, was really time and data intensive. You'd shoot your footage and then get these massive files, but then have to process those files through Canon's Cinema Raw development software into equally huge 4K ProRes files with burnt-in gamma settings. And then because those files were so big, you'd probably have to spend more time creating proxies for all of those before you could even start editing. That was 4 years ago. Today, it's a very different story. Premiere and Resolve both have native support for Canon RAW, and with camera-generated proxies, you don't have to waste any time on that either. So basically, you can start editing pretty much straight away. I'm just going to go through a few things about shooting RAW on the C200 first. Feel free to skip ahead if you're only interested in the editing. For media, I use the Angelbird 256 gig CFast 2.0 card, which gives me about 33 minutes of record time. Alright, so I've just chucked a CFast card in the camera and I'm going to just go through some of the setup things that I do for shooting RAW. So menu, go down to this page where we've got our main rec format. We want to make sure that's on RAW, obviously. And then subrec format, which is our proxy recording. So your options for proxy recording are either XFAVC or MP4. Both of them work, but you do need to make sure that if you're choosing MP4, you should also set the channel to 4-channel audio, otherwise Premiere won't link them up. The other issue with using MP4s is that the naming doesn't match, so you do need to be a lot more careful as far as your data wrangling goes down the track. It's actually a lot easier just to go with XFAVC. The reason for that is you get corresponding names, so it's really easy to link them up, and as well as the default 4-channel audio, so they link up quite easily as well. So let's go with that. And then let's just head across and check if there's anything else we need to set up. So you want to pick your frame rate, either 25p or 50p, whatever you're going with. And then just check your audio format as well. So I just keep mine on 16-bit 4-channel. The only other option is 24-bit 4-channel, but we know that 16-bit 4-channel is going to match the XFAVC format, so that is all good. So yeah, if you take a look at this now, you can actually see that we're set up to record simultaneously on both cards, the RAW on the CFast card, and you can see the little arrow pointing to card A, which is where our proxy files are going to go. The next thing that you probably want to also look at while you're shooting is which gamma you're shooting in. So I just have mine set up in like a little shortcut here. But you've got that down in preset, so your options are Canon Log 3, Canon Log, BT709, which is wide DR, wide dynamic range, or off. If you want the absolute max dynamic range, you can shoot Canon Log. Canon Log 3 is meant to be a little bit easier to grade while still giving you a lot of dynamic range. It's really 13 stops versus 14 stops, something like that. The main difference that I've been able to see is that the highlights are pretty much the same in each Canon Log, but there's a bit more detail in the shadows in Canon Log generally, but yeah, it's up to you. Personally, I actually prefer to shoot Canon Log 3 for the most part. And then you can have a LUT on or off if you want. I've got a shortcut set to switch my LUTs off and on as I go. Once you finish shooting, you just want to make sure that you back up your RAW card and your proxies together. If you're shooting multiple cards in a day, I highly recommend swapping out your SD card with proxies alongside your CFast cards and always keeping them together. It'll make linking everything later heaps easier and keep everything organized. In 2018, Adobe added native support for Cinema Raw Light in Premiere Pro. Combined with using camera proxy files, this massively speeds up the editing process. All right, I've just opened up a new project in Premiere Pro, and I'm going to pull in some sample footage that I shot about 6 months ago in Melbourne. So navigating through here, footage, card 1, I only shot 1 card, and you can see that I've backed up my raw footage and my proxies side by side. So raw, go down to the reel, grab all of the footage and pull it in. All right, so that's all my footage there. Have a quick look at it. And by default, Premiere actually sets it to Canon Log 2, even though I would have shot everything at the time in Canon Log 3, but that's cool. We'll come back to that later. So first thing I want to do is link up all of my proxies, just so that I can work with it pretty quick. So right click, proxy, attach proxies. Now, some people, when they use camera generated proxies, will go through Finder and like rename the proxies so they link up a bit more easily. You don't actually need to do that. All that you need to do is down in match file properties, untick file name, untick file extension and tape name. Make sure you've got media start ticked and these two ticked as well, and then hit attach. So then we'll navigate to our proxies folder. Go grab the first one, check that the name matches up. This is again one of the advantages of shooting in the MXF format. So we've got 24C466, 24C466 in our raw file. So okay, locates the rest, all good, linked up, there we go. So if I make a sequence now, new sequence from clip, chuck that in there, and then I'll just pull that out, rename it, sample footage, pop all the rest of my clips in there as well. Okay, and we can see if I click on it, that's actually a bad shot to show because it's massively overexposed. If I toggle my proxies, there they are. And you can see that the proxies have a slightly different look, basically because you know, it's a 720p highly compressed format. There's just nowhere near as much color information there. So it's actually showing you a little bit more, whereas you're gonna get the flatter log image here. Oh, the other reason why is also because it's shot in log 3 and what this is currently displaying is C log 2, which is also flatter. You can see here that when I've got proxies enabled, it plays back pretty nice, like pretty easy. However, if I switch proxies off, it's a bit of a different story. Like I just hit the space bar and it's, yeah, there you go. It's gradually getting there, but that's not really workable. Whereas this is totally workable. Like I can work with that. You can scrub back and forth, no problem. Also just gonna show the different gamma settings here. So you've got the Canon Cinema Raw Light source settings effect applied to any of these raw clips, and you want to check this before you start actually color grading and stuff like that. Now worth noting that if you click on the clip in the timeline, it won't show you that control panel. So all that you have to do is click on it in the project window in order to then see what cinema gamut and what gamma setting it's currently set to. So because I've shot this in C log 3, it could be good to actually grade this in C log 3. So your options here when you go pull down menu are C log 3, BT709, wide DR, and you've got different actual like color space settings as well. Okay, so let's say that I want to convert all of these first clips to C log 3, or really convert everything to C log 3. I just need to make some presets. So for this one, because I know that all these clips are shot in 5600K, I'm just going to go save preset, and I'm going to call it Canon Log 3 5600K. Then I'm just going to select all of these guys and chuck that on. And now they're all 5600K. And then this one, and I know that all of these subsequent clips are 4300. I'm going to switch that to C log 3, 4300, make another preset, call that Canon log 3, 4300. Okay. Select all these. Whoop, wrong one. Drop that on. And then they're all 4300 C-Log 3 as well. Technically, you're now good to go and start editing, but there's a few more things worth noting. A couple of other things worth noting is sometimes when you're playing back, you might get these green lines on the side of your program window, which can be a little bit annoying. That occurs when your renderer is set to OpenCL. So if you change this to metal, then you won't see that anymore when you're playing. Just don't forget to switch it back to OpenCL when you're rendering out your final video, or you could get some annoying artifacts. So that's pretty much it. You can start editing this like any other project. I'm just gonna demonstrate using LUTs on this footage as well. So I'll just pull an adjustment layer across the whole thing, make sure I select the layer and not the clip, go across to our color tab, still got layer selected. And down under the creative tab, I've installed a few different LUTs. So Canon makes some of their own, which are useful to use. So I've just pre-installed the Canon Log 2 and the Canon Log 3 LUTs that convert from that gamma setting to wide DR. So since I've got everything currently in C-Log 2, I'm just gonna chuck that one on and I'm looking at the proxy. Okay, switch the proxy off. And there we go. Well, I shot that way too hot. That's probably a better example. So yeah, that's a pretty rough conversion, but basically once you add that on, you can, tweak it however you need. There's also plenty of third-party LUTs for this. This is one from Armando Ferrara, which has got a whole different look altogether, but pretty nice. And again, you can do a whole lot of stuff from this. That said, if you want to get the very best out of your image, in my book, you can't go past taking it through Resolve for a more detailed grade. So let's get into that now. So as I mentioned at the top, this is just my workflow for RAW. Others might have a different approach. But basically what I like to do is a round trip from Premiere to Resolve and back again after I've applied a color grade and any other effects that I like to use there, like noise reduction and stabilization. So let's get into it. All right, so I'm just going to go through a quick example of how I might export my footage from Premiere Pro and pull it into DaVinci Resolve and then do my color grade and then bring it back. So imagining this was a full edit. What I would do would be duplicate it, give it the same name, but maybe write something at the end like flattened, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. So grab my flattened version and then lock the picture track, delete everything else, unlock that. And if I had multiple picture tracks, then I'd just pull all of those clips down into a single or two tracks. Okay, and then I'm going to export an XML. So File, Export, Final Cut Pro XML. Chuck it in a folder, I'll call it XML, number 1. Save it there. It's exporting, and it includes a translation report. You'll always get that with raw footage because the XML is not going to include any of the effect that's applied for the Canon RAW stuff. That's no big deal because we'll have full control of the image in Resolve. So now I'm going to open Resolve. I've already created a project here called Canon Cinema Raw Light Demo. And I'm going to pull in that XML. Okay, so I'm in the media tab and I'm just going to go right click, timeline, import, XML, navigate to the XML that I exported before. There it is. And I'm going to keep all of that as is. Use sizing information. Yep, that's all fine. Okay, so as you can see, it's pulled in my footage, and a sequence in Premiere Pro is called a timeline in DaVinci Resolve. So one of the first things I want to do just to get things running a bit faster is link that proxy media again. So I'm just going to change my view to list view, which is a little bit easier, and then grab all of these at once, right click, go down to link proxy media, and then navigate to those proxy files again. So it was under footage, 01, proxies, contents, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to navigate through and then select the folder that contains my proxies. Hit open, and it's connecting them up. And you can see if they're on or not when you've got use proxy media if available. So if I untick that, you can see it goes flat. And then if I tick it again, it's lit up. So that's pretty easy. And that will also help this play a bit more smoothly. It's not playing super smooth right now because I'm doing a screen record, and that also kind of, chews up a bit of computer power. A few things to be aware of in the color tab. One of these is the camera raw panel down in your bottom left-hand corner. So I've just got my first clip selected right now. What I can do here is go full res Canon, then down to clip, and that unlocks all of these other controls here. So white balance we've got as shot, which at the time was 5600. You can change that to any of these other options if you want. Color space, you've got all of these options again. Let's just keep it in cinema gamut. Same thing for gamma, you've got Canon log 2, 3, original, and Rec 709. So let's go Canon log 3, for instance. And just so that we can see what we're looking at, we'll switch off proxy media so that we can, when we're just looking at a still frame, it's not really that big a deal. And then this is kind of a cool thing that you don't have in Premiere. You can actually adjust the ISO, which is kind of crazy. So it was shot at 500 ISO, but you could bump it up to 850 if you thought it was a bit too low. You could drop it down a bit more if you thought it could be a bit darker. So that's another, great control to have at your disposal as well. Then you've got color temp, tint, exposure, sharpness, highlights, shadows, all of these things that you can play with on the actual raw footage itself before you even start grading. So all of that is pretty cool, pretty powerful. Another cool thing that we can look at is the use of LUTs. So right here, I have added in 2 of the Canon official LUTs again, which is, hang on, I'll just change the name, Canon log 2 and Canon log 3. So currently I've got this clip set to Canon log 3. So if I then want to put that LUT on, then we can see that's a proper color correction LUT for Canon log 3 to Rec 709. And you can already see that that looks pretty nice by comparison to the original. So if I want to remove that LUT, I could use a third-party LUT as well. So say from Mondo Bytes, base LUT, Fly LUT's current grade. That's a pretty heavy one, and that LUT is actually designed for C-Log 2, so that's kind of how it's designed to look, that one. Yeah, so I'll get rid of that again. And from here, that's just applying a LUT, but you can also do all sorts of other cool stuff as well. Like in edit, you've got things like stabilization, you've got noise reduction, you've got lens correction. There's just so many cool things you can do with images. Okay, so that's an overview of some of the stuff that you can do with Canon Raw in DaVinci Resolve to get started. But yeah, take it through, do whatever you want with it, make it look awesome. Once I'm ready to send it back, I export an XML with 4K ProRes files of the graded clips. Alright, so lastly, let's say that we've now graded this whole project. We're going to go across to the Deliver tab. Head across here to Premiere XML and go down through these settings. Might go 422 HQ, render at source resolution. Yep. That looks good, that looks good. We definitely don't want to be using proxy media or optimized media. Let's force sizing and force debayer to highest quality. And also let's pick a location for where to put this. So I would usually just go into my XML folder, make a second one, open that. Oh, we also want to make sure that that has individual clips selected. Audio, we can actually say no to audio pretty easily. We don't need it because we've got audio in our other project already. And then we can add to render queue. And then that's all there, ready to go. It's going to render out 4K master graded clips and then hit render all. Okay, so I've just exported my XML from Resolve, and if I go across here to Finder, I can see that's the XML file just there. And if I then go across to Premiere, I'll pull that in. That'll import that. If I go down, jump in the sequence for that, I can see all of my graded clips are ProRes files. So then all I have to do is grab those, go across to my final edit, chuck in a new track, paste it in, check that all the cuts line up, looks like they do. And that's my graded video. And then I just need to export it. So one thing I want to check before I do an export is back to project settings, general, make sure this is on OpenCL and not Metal, so that I don't get any errors in my video. And then export media. I think that for exporting for 4K, it's actually pretty good to go pretty high bit rate. So I'll go like constant bit rate, 50, use max render quality, 4096 by 2160 is the DCI aspect ratio, and then you're good to go and hit export. And that's it. I hope you found that helpful, and stay safe.